The kiss lasted exactly 3 seconds, just long enough for Jack Reynolds to push the EpiPen into Eliza Blackwood's thigh through her designer dress. As her airways began to open and color returned to her face, he knew he'd saved her life. What he didn't know was that those 3 seconds would completely upend his world, her empire, and the lives of everyone they loved. If you're wondering how a struggling single father working as a chauffeur ended up in the back of a limousine performing emergency first aid on one of the world's wealthiest women, and why that moment would spark a chain reaction that neither of them could have imagined, stay with me. This is a story about second chances, unexpected connections, and how sometimes the most important journeys begin when we're just trying to survive. If you enjoy stories about life-changing moments and unlikely relationships, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more content that touches the heart. Jack Reynolds checked his watch for the third time in 5 minutes. The digital numbers glowed 11:47 p.m., almost midnight, and still no sign of his client. He adjusted his chauffeur's cap and leaned against the sleek black limousine parked outside the Pinnacle, Manhattan's most exclusive rooftop restaurant. February wind cut through his uniform jacket, but he couldn't risk waiting in the car. Ms. Blackwood, according to his employer, expected her driver to be standing at attention when she emerged. At 38, Jack had never imagined he'd be working as a driver for the ultra-wealthy. 6 months ago, he'd been a construction foreman with a steady income and a life that made sense. Then came the accident at the site, the medical bills, and the layoffs. Now he worked 3 jobs just to keep a roof over his daughter's head and to pay for the special therapy she needed since her mother had walked out 3 years ago. Just temporary, he muttered to himself, stamping his feet against the cold. Just until Lily's doing better. The restaurant doors finally swung open, releasing a burst of warm air and laughter. Out stepped Eliza Blackwood, 34-year-old heiress to the Blackwood technology fortune, wrapped in a shimmering silver gown that probably cost more than Jack's monthly rent. Unlike the tabloid photos that showed her laughing at galas or scowling at paparazzi, tonight she looked tired. Vulnerable, even. "Ms. Blackwood," Jack said, straightening his posture and opening the car door. She barely acknowledged him, sliding into the back seat with practiced grace. Jack closed the door, circled to the driver's side, and settled behind the wheel. "Home, please," she said, her voice clipped but polite. "And could you take the scenic route? I need some time to think." "Of course, ma'am." As Jack navigated through the late-night Manhattan traffic, he occasionally glanced in the rearview mirror. Eliza Blackwood was staring out the window, absently rubbing her wrist where a diamond bracelet had left faint marks on her skin. For someone who supposedly had everything, she looked remarkably alone. "Beautiful night," he commented, immediately regretting breaking protocol. Drivers weren't supposed to initiate conversation. To his surprise, she responded. "Is it? I hadn't noticed. The city lights reflecting off the clouds. Makes the whole sky look like it's glowing from within." She looked up through the sunroof. "I suppose you're right." The car fell silent again. Jack focused on driving, taking the longer route through Central Park as requested. He was halfway through the park when he heard a strange sound from the back seat, a gasping, wheezing noise. "Ms. Blackwood?" He glanced in the mirror and felt his heart drop. Eliza was clutching her throat, her face rapidly swelling, lips turning blue. "Ms. Blackwood." Jack pulled the car over immediately and jumped out, yanking open the back door. Eliza was in full anaphylactic shock, her breathing becoming more labored by the second. "Allergies? Do you have an EpiPen?" he asked urgently. She gestured weakly toward her small clutch purse. Jack dumped the contents onto the seat, lipstick, phone, keys, and a slim EpiPen case. His hands shook as he grabbed it, remembering the training he'd received when Lily had been diagnosed with severe allergies 2 years ago. "This is going to hurt," he warned, pushing her dress aside to access her outer thigh. In that moment of crisis, he did something unexpected. He cupped her face with his free hand and pressed his lips briefly against hers, a gesture of comfort and connection before the pain. Then he jabbed the EpiPen into her thigh and held it for the required 10 seconds. The effect was almost immediate. Eliza's breathing eased, though her face remained swollen. Jack was already on the phone with 911, giving their location in Central Park and explaining the situation. "Stay with me," he urged, holding her hand as they waited for the ambulance. "What caused this? Do you know?" "Tr Truffles," she managed to whisper. "New chef, didn't tell me." Jack stayed with her until the ambulance arrived, explaining to the paramedics what had happened and what he'd done. As they loaded her onto a stretcher, Eliza reached out and grabbed his wrist. "Thank you," she said, her voice hoarse. "Your name?" "Jack. Jack Reynolds." "Jack Reynolds," she repeated, as if committing it to memory before the paramedics whisked her away. Jack stood in the cold, watching the ambulance disappear into the night, certain he'd be fired for his unprofessional behavior. He'd kissed his billionaire client, even if it was just a moment of human connection during a crisis. He climbed back into the driver's seat and called his dispatcher to report the incident, then drove the empty limousine back to the garage, his mind racing with worry about both Eliza's condition and his own future. The next morning, Jack woke to his 6-year-old daughter Lily bouncing on his bed. "Daddy! Daddy! Wake up! It's Saturday!" Jack groaned, having fallen asleep just 4 hours earlier after filing incident reports and answering questions from his supervisor. "Morning, sunshine," he mumbled, pulling her into a hug. "Can we go to the park today? You promised." "We sure can," he said, though the thought of returning to Central Park after last night's events made his stomach tighten. "But first, breakfast." As Jack made pancakes shaped like dinosaurs, Lily's favorite, his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost let it go to voicemail, but something made him answer. "Mr. Reynolds?" A crisp, professional female voice. "This is Margot Chen, personal assistant to Eliza Blackwood. Ms. Blackwood would like to meet with you this afternoon, if possible." Jack nearly dropped the spatula. Is she okay?" "Ms. Blackwood has recovered well, thanks to your quick action. She's requested a private meeting at her penthouse at 2 p.m. A car will be sent for you." Jack looked at Lily, happily coloring at the kitchen table, oblivious to the conversation that might determine their future. "I have my daughter with me today. I don't have childcare on Saturdays." There was a pause. "Bring her. Ms. Blackwood specifically mentioned she'd like to meet your daughter as well." After hanging up, Jack stood frozen in his kitchen, pancake batter dripping onto the floor. Why would one of the world's wealthiest women want to meet his daughter? Was this some elaborate way to fire him with witnesses present? Or worse, was she planning to sue him for inappropriate conduct? "Daddy, the pancake is melting," Lily pointed out, giggling. "Right. Sorry, kiddo." He turned back to the stove, trying to focus on making breakfast while his mind spun with possibilities. At precisely 1:30 p.m., a sleek black SUV, not the company limousine he usually drove, pulled up outside their modest apartment building in Queens. The driver, a woman in a tailored suit, greeted them warmly and helped install Lily's booster seat. "Ms. Blackwood is looking forward to meeting you both," she said as they crossed the Queensboro Bridge into Manhattan. Jack nodded, too nervous to respond. He'd dressed in his best non-uniform clothes, dark jeans and a navy button-down shirt that his sister had given him last Christmas. Lily wore her favorite purple dress with unicorn leggings, her dark curls pulled back with rainbow clips. "Is this lady rich, Daddy?" Lily asked, peering out the window as they entered the Upper East Side. "Yes, very," Jack answered honestly. "Like, swimming pool rich or rocket ship rich?" Despite his anxiety, Jack laughed. "Definitely rocket ship rich." The Blackwood residence occupied the top 3 floors of a limestone building overlooking Central Park. The elevator required a special key and opened directly into a foyer larger than Jack's entire apartment. Margot Chen, a poised woman in her 40s, greeted them. Mr. Reynolds, Miss Reynolds, welcome. Please follow me. She led them through rooms filled with museum-quality art and furniture that looked both expensive and uncomfortable. Lily's eyes grew wider with each new space they entered, but to Jack's relief, she kept her hands firmly clasped in his. Finally, they reached a sunlit conservatory filled with plants and comfortable-looking furniture. And there, looking remarkably recovered despite the previous night's emergency, stood Eliza Blackwood. In person, without the evening gown and emergency, she seemed both more and less intimidating. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore tailored pants and a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than Jack's monthly salary but looked deceptively casual. "Mr. Reynolds," she said, stepping forward with her hand extended. "Thank you for coming." "Ms. Blackwood," Jack replied, shaking her hand. "I'm glad to see you're feeling better." "Thanks to you." Her gaze shifted to Lily, who was partially hiding behind Jack's leg. Eliza's expression softened as she knelt down to Lily's level. "And you must be Lily. Your dad told me you like unicorns." Lily peeked out, surprised. "You know about unicorns? I have several books about them. Would you like to see while I talk to your dad?" Lily looked up at Jack, who nodded encouragingly. Margot stepped forward to lead Lily to a child-sized table in the corner of the room, already set up with books and what appeared to be a brand new set of art supplies. Once Lily was settled, Eliza gestured for Jack to join her in a seating area near the windows overlooking the park. "I owe you my life," she said without preamble. Jack shifted uncomfortably. Anyone would have done the same. No, they wouldn't have. "My date last night," the venture capitalist who insisted on the truffle special despite my mentioning my allergies, he panicked and ran to the bathroom when I started showing symptoms. The restaurant staff called me a car instead of an ambulance to avoid publicity. Her voice was matter-of-fact, but Jack could hear the underlying hurt. "You were the only one who actually helped." "I'm sorry that happened to you," Jack said sincerely. "The company tells me you've only been driving for them for 3 months. Jack tensed, wondering if this was leading to his termination. "Yes, that's right. Before that, you were in construction management. Project supervisor for Meridian Builders. You looked into my background?" Eliza smiled slightly. "I make it a point to know who I'm dealing with. Especially someone who saved my life." She leaned forward. The kiss was unexpected. Jack felt his face flush. "I apologize for that. It was completely unprofessional. In the moment, it was instinct. My daughter had a severe reaction once, and the paramedic did something similar, a human connection during a scary moment. I shouldn't have." "It was kind," Eliza interrupted. "Unexpected, but kind. And it's part of why I wanted to meet with you today." She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the park where they'd been the night before. "That moment, when I couldn't breathe, when I thought I might die, it clarified some things for me. I've spent my entire life surrounded by people who want something from me. My money, my connections, my company shares. Even my parents saw me primarily as the Blackwood heir, not as Eliza." She turned back to face him. "But you, a complete stranger, showed me more genuine care in 3 minutes than most people in my life have shown me in years. And that made me realize how empty my existence has become." Jack wasn't sure how to respond. This wasn't at all what he'd expected from this meeting. "I have a proposition for you, Mr. Reynolds." "Jack, please." "Jack." She smiled, and for the first time, it reached her eyes. "I need someone I can trust. Someone who sees people as people, not as walking bank accounts or networking opportunities. I need a project manager for the Blackwood Foundation's new community initiative." Jack blinked in surprise. "I'm sorry. We're launching a program to build community centers in underserved neighborhoods, starting right here in New York. The first one breaks ground in Queens next month. The project needs someone with construction experience, management skills, and, most importantly, genuine compassion. Based on your work history and what I witnessed last night, you have all three. Ms. Blackwood. Eliza, please. Eliza, he corrected himself, the name feeling strange on his tongue. I appreciate the offer, but I don't have experience with charitable foundations or community projects. But you do have experience managing complex construction projects and caring for people in crisis. The rest you can learn. She named a salary that made Jack's eyes widen. Plus comprehensive benefits, including specialized pediatric care options. Jack glanced over at Lily, who was happily showing Margot her drawing of what appeared to be a unicorn with suspiciously limousine-like features. The specialized therapy she needed for her selective mutism and anxiety, a result of her mother's abandonment, was draining his savings at an alarming rate. "Why me?" he asked finally. "There must be hundreds of qualified people who'd want this position." Eliza's expression grew serious. "Because when I was dying, you didn't see Eliza Blackwood, billionaire heiress. You just saw a person who needed help. Do you know how rare that is in my world?" She paused. "I need someone who will be honest with me, who sees the real needs of the communities we're trying to serve, not just what they think I want to hear." Jack considered her words carefully. "I'd need a flexible schedule sometimes. For Lily's appointments and school events." "Of course. The foundation believes in work-life balance. I'm trying to practice it myself, on my therapist's recommendation." She smiled wryly. "I'd need to think about it. Talk to my sister, figure out logistics. Take the weekend. Call me Monday." She handed him a business card with a private number handwritten on the back. "And Jack? Thank you again. Not just for saving my life, but for reminding me what humanity looks like." As they prepared to leave, Lily ran over to show Jack her drawings. "Look, Daddy. I drew the lady's house with unicorns living in it." Eliza knelt down again. "That's beautiful, Lily. Would you like to take the art supplies home with you?" Lily's eyes widened. "Really? The whole box?" "Absolutely. Artists need proper tools." As they rode the elevator down, Lily clutching her new art supplies and chattering excitedly about the unicorn lady, Jack felt as though he'd stepped into an alternate reality. 24 hours ago, he'd been a chauffeur worried about making rent. Now he was considering a job offer that could change everything for him and Lily. What he didn't know was that this was just the beginning of how his life would intertwine with Eliza Blackwood's, and that the journey ahead would challenge and change them both in ways neither could imagine. The following Monday, Jack accepted Eliza's offer. Within 2 weeks, he'd given notice at his 3 jobs and moved into a new role at the Blackwood Foundation. His first day consisted of orientation meetings, paperwork, and a tour of the Foundation's offices, which occupied the 15th floor of the Blackwood corporate building in Midtown. "Your primary responsibility will be overseeing the Queens Community Center project," explained Margot, who turned out to be not just Eliza's personal assistant but also the Foundation's operations director. "You'll work with architects, contractors, community leaders, and various stakeholders to ensure the center meets the neighborhood's needs." Jack nodded, taking notes and trying to absorb the flood of information. The project was ambitious, a 50,000 square foot facility with educational spaces, health services, recreation areas, and job training programs. The budget was more than he'd ever managed, even at his previous construction job. "Don't look so terrified," came Eliza's voice from the doorway. She entered the conference room carrying her own